Grammy Award-nominated singer and songwriter Leslie Mendelson has been praised by Jackson Browne, who said, "Leslie's melodies are timeless and have passages that remind me of the pop songs I grew up hearing on the radio." Mendelson is on tour this summer promoting her fourth studio album, After the Party. She'll perform at the Sweetwater Music Hall in Mill Valley on Thursday, July 18th, and she joins me now. Welcome to the show, Leslie.
Hi, Stephen.
Great you can make it. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Why don't we start out with your origin story, influences, and mentors?
Okay, in that order?
Whatever you like.
My origin story. I sound like a superhero. I was bit by a radioactive spider, and it gave me musical powers.
Wow. Okay.
I came from a musical household. My dad's a trumpet player, and we had a really good record collection growing up, and I think that definitely influenced me. I had a piano, and I started playing at an early age just because I guess I had a good ear, and I would just like pick melodies off the TV or the radio or the stereo, and I would just kind of mimic it. I think there was a book that that my dad had that I totally stole. It was like, I slept with it. It's The Complete Beatles. I think Bantam put it out, and I remember just learning how to really just learn how to. I mean, I took some piano. I got some piano lessons when I was a kid, but it was really just learning Beatles songs that got me. I feel like I just loved learning those songs, and I feel like I learned every Beatles song in that book.
That's quite a catalog too, yeah.
I mean, I cut my teeth on that, I would say.
And who were some of your influences besides listening to the Beatles?
When I was a kid, it was probably just whatever was on the radio, pop songs. I think I remember like loving like the Eurythmics and Madonna and the Bangles when I was a kid. But then getting older, like I love Radiohead and Nirvana and got into hip hop a little bit, like Snoop and all that stuff. So it's just like there was so much music available, but it wasn't until probably I got my first acoustic guitar when I started getting to Joni Mitchell and songwriters like that. And actually early on, I loved Harry Nilsson and Randy Newman. They were influences for me on the piano, and Dr. John. I wanted to play that style, and Carole King, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I started to get into the Laurel Canyon sound when I got my guitar because I just wanted to strum and learn and try to write songs like that.
Yeah. Did you have somebody guiding you along the way? Was there a mentor?
I mean, my dad was great because he's musical, and I remember when I was little, I'd sit at the piano with him and we'd play. But as far as like a mentor, I never had like that amazing teacher that like changed my life. I think it was just getting into it and having friends that I could play with, but mostly just me in my bedroom alone, like just with my sad girl songs. But yeah.
Cool. Well, let's discuss the new record called After the Party. Tell me about the album's title and how you would describe the overall collection of songs.
The album's title came from the Andy Warhol picture of the same name, his 1979 picture of this great disheveled table with empty glasses and ashtrays. And I remember just staring at it. And it was during the pandemic, just thinking like, I want to be there. Go. And a lot of these songs kind of were inspired from that feeling. For the first bit of the pandemic, I did nothing. I just, like everyone else, I wasn't adventurous. I didn't bake bread or anything or learn a language. I just watched a bunch of TV, and it was like a big snow day. But at some point I did start to write again. And my last record, If You Can't Say Anything Nice, that came out in the spring of 2020, was very reflective of the time of feeling it's kind of a little bit of my primal scream record. And I say that kind of like it was just a reflection of the times of a lot of anxiety and with the 24-hour news cycle that was going on then, and depression, anxiety, and feeling overwhelmed. And I feel like I let a lot of that out on that record. And this new collection of songs, I feel like there's a bit more of a calm, even though it was written in a time when we didn't really know what was going on, so maybe there should have been a little bit more panic, but I didn't wanna write a pandemic record. I feel like my last record, like, dealt with, like, the culmination of all that fear and like I said, anxiety. So this one, I feel like even though it was written in a darker time, was, I think, my way of dreaming and hoping and looking to the future for a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel.
Mm. On the album, you're backed by a stellar band featuring guitarist Waddy, Wachtell, John Jorgensen, bassist Leland, Sklar, Derek Anderson, and Jim Keltner, and Abe Rouse. How did you assemble such a great lineup?
They're a bunch of bums, aren't they? Slackers. Well, I think that, okay, so to answer just as far as how did we get everybody together, it was
Right.
Peter Asher who
Mm.
produced the record, and, that's another story, but just focusing on that bit of, like, well, who do you want to work with?
Mhm.
And I know all the records that he has made, and a lot of those musicians, speaking about Laurel Canyon in the early days, they were on my favorite records.
Mhm.
And I was like, what are the chances that I can make a record with the guys that have made my favorite records? And the fact that it happened is just, it's mind-blowing.
Yeah, it's amazing. I'll ask you about the producers, the 3
Sure.
producers that you have on in a little bit in this interview, but let's listen to some of the music that you sent over. The first track we're going to listen to is called Rock and Roll on the Radio. What a great title. Can you tell us about the backstory here?
Was really just inspired by driving around looking for good rock and roll on the radio, just and not finding much. I mean, there are still a few good rock and roll stations, but it's far and few between. I just love it, and it's just a bit of nostalgia and a feeling, wanting for something that just makes you feel good and brings you back to a time when things made you feel good.
Yeah, I remember those days.
We're still having them. Just, we gotta really search
Just needs
for
a
it.
little fine tuning here and there, but yeah. Well, anyway, let's listen to it now. This is called Rock and Roll on the Radio, and our guest today is Leslie Mendelson.
Why don't they play rock and roll on the radio anymore? 'Cause I love the sound of it, shaking the ground with it. Why don't they play rock and roll on the radio anymore? 'Cause I'm all about it. It's more than nostalgic. It's all I wanna hear, ringing in my ears. It's all I've ever known. Rock and roll on the radio. I remember when rock and roll could have changed the world.
My guest today is Brooklyn-based singer-songwriter Leslie Mendelson, who has released her fourth album. With After the Party, you were assisted by three talented producers. We mentioned some of the great superstars that you have playing on the record, but the producers on the album are Peter Asher, Tyler Chester, and Steve, I hope we get his last name right, McEwen?
McEwen.
Okay. Why did you choose three?
They chose me. No, just kidding. As far as like the three, Steve is my co-writer, Steve McEwen, and we've been working together for years. And so he was there. He co-produced with Peter, and then we had written all the songs together. So that's why he makes kind of the three. But then as far as working with Peter and then Tyler, I had an opportunity to work with both of them, and I didn't want to say no. I just wanted to work with them. And then at the end of the day, I was thinking, well, what am I going to do with these songs? And when I put them all together, they worked. So I was like, well, this sounds like a record to me. So it's just kind of that simple.
It came out great, I must admit.
Thank you. It's a little bit of a journey. It's like a Tyler sandwich in there, surrounded by like Peter bread. No.
That's one way to look at it. Yeah. Okay.
Stupid.
Let's listen to some more music. We're going to play another track from the new album. This one's called The Good Life. What can you tell our listeners about this one?
Well, this was very inspired by my love for 70s country music. I'm a big Glenn Campbell fan, like Jimmy Webb, Glenn Campbell, and Waylon Jennings and Willie Nelson, and that groove. Especially with Waylon, he's got that thing. And as far as the lyrics, when we started, I think the lyrics came first, and then that feeling of the music and the rhythm came to back it up, and it just felt like a good marriage of style.
Well, let's play it now. This is called The Good Life by Leslie Mendelson, and you're listening to Backstage Sonoma.
Won't you cut yourself some slack? Pour yourself a drink. 'Cause when you're feeling at your worst, you're doing better than you think. When you can't get out of bed 'cause you haven't slept a wink, and your time is running out, and left the dishes in the sink. Any day now it'll come around, when the world turns upside down, inside out makes you crazy. Don't worry, baby, everything will be alright. And if I ever have a chance to do it all again, I wouldn't change it. So pour me a drink, pass me a light. Here's to the good life. Here's to the good life. All the stars are out tonight. Who knows what's round the bend? May the music never die. Let the party never end. Any day now it'll come around, when the world turns upside down, inside out makes you crazy. to the good life. Here's to the good life. Here's to the good life. Let's go out tonight. Let the party never end. Here's to the good life.
Leslie Mendelson is our guest today on Backstage Sonoma. Leslie, what attracts musicians like Jackson Browne, Bob Weir, Jacob Dylan, Roger Daltrey, and others who have collaborated or invited you to open their shows?
Besides my award-winning personality, I've just been lucky, to get these opportunities to work with these giants. As far as Roger Daltrey, that's kind of because of The Who, and their managers managed me for a bit. And so I had this opportunity to go to London about 8 years ago. So that relationship came from that. But ironically enough, I don't know if it's irony, but I had met the person that introduced me to Bob Weir through my manager who managed The Who. Justin Kreutzmann, who is Bill Kreutzmann's son, the drummer of the Grateful Dead. He was in London working on a documentary for Pete Townsend. And so he came to one of my shows, and then I think he saw a video online, because I'm a Grateful Dead fan, and I have been since I was, in my 20s or so. And when I think they found a little desk concert from Relics, where I was doing a cover of Friend of the Devil. And so when he came to my show, he shouted out, "Friend of the Devil." And I'm in England. I'm like, in London. I was like, "Who?" And then we met, and then he was just like, he was mentioning that Bob's doing this web series called We're Here. And he wound up putting me in touch with that camp. And then and Justin was directing them. So he basically invited me to do it. And Bob, he's like, "Oh, I should give this to Bob." I don't know. Somehow it happened. And Bob said, "Yeah, let's get her on the show." And for those who don't know We're Here, it's this web series that he'd invite singer-songwriters or artists onto a show, play a bunch of songs, and then between the sets, do this David Letterman type of interview. And it was wild, and I loved it. And it really launched a bunch of friendships for me. Well, Jason Crosby, who's in the Bay Area now, I knew from Long Island, but Steve Kimmock, I met that day, and we have had a friendship and musical relationship since then. And Dave Schools, who produced the Kimmock record for us, and Jay Lane. And so they're my buddies, and we just had such a blast. And so that, and then during that time I was working on my record, Love and Murder. And yes, this is a family album. And Bob came and sang on Blue Bayou with me. So it was just, just a nice.
How cool. Wow.
Time. Yeah.
So how's the current tour going?
I feel like I'm always on tour. I just had my album release party in New York.
Okay.
Which was so much fun. We did it with a band. Actually, John Kimmock, Steve's son, played drums. And I had Adam Minkoff on bass and Todd Caldwell on organ and keys. I played guitar and keys. And Steve McEwen, my co-writer, was on guitar as well. And it was just we did the whole record from beginning to end, and then a bunch of, some other stuff. But that was really fun. And then I did some stuff up in the Northeast this weekend, Boston and New Hampshire. And then I'm kind of just hanging out until I get to California. I think Sweetwater. Besides I'm just doing some random 4th of July gig. But other than that, yeah, I'll be out on the West Coast in a couple of weeks.
What can your audience look forward to at the Sweetwater Music Hall show?
Well, I'm definitely going to be doing some songs off the record, a bunch of stuff. And then, some of my older songs and some covers and maybe a special guest or two. And we'll see what happens.
Little teaser there. Who's going to join you on stage besides the special guest?
Well, Steve McEwen, he's going to come.
Okay. Cool.
I think so. Oh, I don't. You know what? To be announced, TBA. I'm not sure yet.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
All right. Let me remind our listeners, Leslie Mendelson will perform at the Sweetwater Music Hall in Mill Valley on Thursday, July 19th. Doors open at 7 p.m. and showtime is at 8 p.m. For tickets and more info, please visit sweetwatermusichall.com and be sure to stop by her website, lesliemendelson.com. Leslie, thank you so much for your time today. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Oh, me too. Great to meet you.